markets are falling sharply in Asia overnight after a weekend that saw no reprieve in President Trump's painful tariffs. The largest mover today, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index, down around 10%. We await the open, of course, for London and European markets at 8 a.m. Meanwhile, US stock market futures signalled further weakness. They are down around 2 to 3% as we speak. Speaking to journalists on Air Force One overnight, the president was resolute.
I spoke to a lot of leaders, European, Asian, from all over the world. They're dying to make a deal. But I said, we're not going to have deficits with your country. We're not going to do that, because to me a deficit is a loss. We're going to have surpluses, or we're at worst going to be breaking even. What's going to happen with the market, I can't tell you, but I can tell you our country has gotten a lot stronger. I don't want anything to go down, but sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something. And we have such a horrible, we have been treated so badly by other countries because we had stupid leadership that allowed this to happen.
Those comments from President Trump came after the US Treasury Secretary yesterday said the market moves were short term, and he said the White House will hold the course. And of course, over the weekend saw some fierce reaction as well, comments from various Asian leaders. But we'll get to that in a moment, because there is a snapshot of what markets are doing right now. A reminder of the astonishing size of those moves. The Hong Kong index down over 10%. The Nikkei in Japan down 6.8%. It's eradicated the last 1.5 years of gains in the course of just a couple of sessions. Some snapshots of what's going on in Japan for you. Toyota down 8%, Nintendo down 10%, of course, bigger exporters to the United States. But perhaps the real eye of the storm, which is perhaps more worrying, banks in Japan down double digits. MUFG, one of the biggest banks, is down 15%, suggesting there could be contagion into other parts of these economies. And look, there you've got Australia, also down 4%, similar to the UK, only got the 10% tariff, but still suffering significantly. Shanghai down 6%. Well, our Asia correspondent, Helen Ann Smith, is standing by for us in Beijing. Helen Ann, very good morning to you. Turbulent start to markets, continuing the theme of last week. Perhaps actually even worse, the snapshot this morning. Talk us through what has happened over the course of the weekend. And I guess I mentioned Australia there, not retaliating, but front and centre, China is.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think there's a real sense this morning that the markets are not just responding to what Donald Trump announced on Wednesday afternoon US time, but they are also now responding to, crucially, how China decided to retaliate. China actually announced what it would do in retaliation sort of late on Friday afternoon, Asia time. So a lot of the markets were just about to close. They didn't have a chance to properly kind of absorb that news. Actually, markets in China, Taiwan and Hong Kong were actually closed altogether on Friday because it was a national holiday. So you're getting this sense now here in Asia on Monday morning that they're all having a chance to absorb that news. And as you were just running through there, the falls are absolutely astonishing. 10% off the Hong Kong Hang Seng index. Taiwan's index also down 10%. The Nikkei, 8% or so when it first opened. It's rallied a little since then, but really, really big numbers, akin to sort of similar to what we saw around the time of the COVID pandemic at the very beginning days of that. And it's no surprise, really, when you take into account the very big numbers that are involved in this sort of tit-for-tat trade war for, now that we're seeing between China and the US. Remember, Donald Trump announced on Wednesday that he would introduce a 34% reciprocal tariff on all Chinese goods. That is on top of what he announced earlier in his term. China decided to respond in kind, 34% in exact tit-for-tat retaliation on top of what it had earlier announced. So in reality, we're talking about in excess of 50% tariffs on all goods between China and the US. And these are the two world's biggest economies. So all these other countries in this region and in the world are deeply affected by what those two countries do to each other. It affects trade flows, it affects incomes, it affects global demand. And I think also crucially, the markets will be uneasy because there is just a sense of retaliation and no sense that negotiation is anywhere near at the moment. I think they get that from not just how big China's response was. Previously, there's been a sense of restraint, not so at all at the back end of last week. And certainly what Donald Trump said over the weekend about everyone needing to take their medicine. He also said there'd be no deal with China until the trade deficit was sorted out. So I think a real nervousness that no one's backing down in terms of the two biggest superpowers here, and that has an impact on everyone.